Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here for Popternative, speaking to Julia Macchio about season 4 of Cobra Kai, now streaming worldwide on Netflix. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm so excited to chat. It's an exciting time. We're going to get into everything, but specifically, performing, acting, dancing, it's storytelling. When did you officially decide that you wanted to do storytelling, Julia?
That's such an interesting question because I feel like there was never even really a time when I decided to do it. It was something that has just been in my blood since I could walk, since I could function. Some of my earliest memories from being even a toddler is I would watch tons of Disney movies and I would act out the movies and I would sing the songs and I would dance. And I don't think it was ever, obviously as I got older and I chose to do it as a career, I made that conscious choice, but it was just always something that was in my blood. And it was, as a kid, I never felt like I had that moment where I decided, I'm going to do this. It was just something that's brought me joy for as long as I can remember.
Was it you were around it for most of your life, right? But was there anything specifically that you were drawn towards? Like, was it theater? Was it dancing? Like, what was your first love in storytelling?
I would say a lot of people actually don't know this about me, but singing was actually a big inspiration as a kid. And I've trained classically in dance since I was 5 years old, but singing was actually the thing that I remember drawing me into the creative realm, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's singing something I've always done. And now I do musical theater and I've always loved it, but it was actually singing before even dancing was something that drew me in and was something that I knew I wanted to do professionally.
I feel like it's really interesting too with musical theater and just theater in general. That's basically where you're learning your craft a lot. Like a lot of people start working in theater and then, work on TV shows, movies. Do you feel like people don't realize that sometimes? Like a lot of people kind of start in theater.
Yeah, I think it varies person to person, but theater, both worlds are so incredibly different. But at the same time, like you just said, you're trying to expand your craft. And I've always said, however many ways you can stretch that creative muscle or keep it working, the better artist you'll be, whether it's theater, film, songwriting, television writing, choreography, whatever it is. I feel like every area of creativity has helped me to become, or hopefully helped me to become, a better artist.
Yep.
So yeah, I do feel like there are certain basics that exist maybe in theater. I don't know. But again, I think it depends on everyone's personal journey. But I've just always enjoyed doing both. And it's funny because as a kid, I really wanted to do more commercial work. I wanted to do more TV and film. And theater was something that kind of, I don't want to say it fell into my lap, but I had been a dancer. I had been performing for live audiences and I had been a singer and also acted. So I was like, theater makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Implement all three. But it wasn't necessarily something that I set out to do as a young kid. It was something that I kind of fell in love with as I continued to do what brought me joy. And thankfully it did, because I love musical theater and I love TV film. It's great to be able to do both.
I was about to say, it's pretty cool to do that, kind of wear many hats within kind of the performing storytelling kind of universe, so to speak.
Right.
So and last quick question about that as well, before we get into Cobra Kai and everything. What excites you about storytelling? You talked a bit about how you got into it, but what excites you about storytelling, Julia?
I would say one of the main things that excites me about it is learning more about myself. I feel like through any character that I've played, through any project that I've done, I always learn something about myself, whether it's a personal thing or maybe it's something that I do in the workspace that I didn't know that I did, like a tendency that I have. I always find that really fascinating and exciting to keep, digging deeper and learning more about myself and how I can use my experiences and what I have to offer in my art. So
Yeah.
I guess, learning more about myself it's been a journey and an awesome one. It's really cool.
It's so good. So we have a TV show that we need to talk about, right?
We do. Ozark, right?
Oh yeah,
Right on.
Ozark. Yeah. Oh yeah. Cobra Kai. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You know, people recognize the last name. You know, your father is the original Karate Kid. But is there anything you can tell me? First of all, you were so great in season 4. I loved it so much. You did such a great job.
Thanks.
But is there anything specifically you can tell me about how this came to be? Like how you got involved with Cobra Kai for season 4?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'd been visiting the set for seasons 1, 2, and 3 just with my family we would visit my dad and
Hi Dad, how's it going?
and I got to be friends with a lot of the cast and crew, and it had been in conversation, like it had come up in conversation a couple of times. Like if there was anything that made sense in the show, like that, hey, that would be a cool thing. And then, right before season 4 filmed, the guys, the big 3, John, Josh, and Hayden, the creators of the show, they got on a call with my dad just to talk about the upcoming season, as they do with every season, just to give him kind of a general lowdown of what's going to go down. And they had mentioned that they had an idea for this Vanessa character.
Yep.
And she was going to be helping out with the Anthony storyline, and that she was going to give the LaRussos some parenting advice, if you will. So that was the first time I'd heard about it. I think that was October of 2020. It was about 2 months before they started filming season 4. And I was so excited because not only to get to play a LaRusso, but to be around everyone who so many of my friends, and it's just always such a good vibe on set. So that's generally how it came to be.
For sure.
And I'm so glad it did, because it was such a blast.
And, like you said, your background's in the entertainment realm, the storytelling realm. Did it, season to season, this drops and it gets more popular and popular, especially with the move to Netflix. It just has an unbelievable, worldwide fan base. It's crazy. Did it kind of feel almost like it's, I'd love to be involved with the show, it's only a matter of time? Or did it kind of surprise you that it finally officially happened, that you were part of it? Like, what was it like when you found out you were actually going to be part of the show?
It was a little bit of both. I never wanted to expect anything, because the show is, for anyone who watches the show, it's so huge. Every season there are more characters and there are multiple storylines going on. So it was kind of one of those things that I was like, hey, if something at any point makes sense, that would be so cool. But I didn't want to expect anything, because I understand, you have to play to what's selling and the characters that people are watching and loving. And so it was a little bit of both. It was something that I was ooh, I hope so. But also I was genuinely surprised, because I didn't want to expect anything. But it was such a pleasant. So I remember the day. Of my dad telling me, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited to do this.
Sometimes just going with the flow and taking it day by day, I feel like it's just the way to go, right?
Yeah. And even, you have to, with TV and film, you get so many, you might write a character in, and then 2 months in, you're in a writer's room and they're like, oh, you know what, this doesn't make sense, or we have to cut this, or they have to get notes from multiple different people. You never know with a new character, especially one that's not a regular on the show, you kind of never know how that's going to go. So up until about 2 weeks before, I was like, oh, I hope. And then I got the script and I was like, this is gold. It's great writing. It's awesome.
It's so great. And I always double check, right? You've seen all of season 4, right?
I have.
Okay, honestly, Julie, you can't assume anymore. I've done interviews.
No.
Yeah, I've done interviews, and I'm like, the reps are sitting in, and I'm just like, hey, so how was it, how was it watching a performance or something, right? And then they're just like, actually, I haven't seen it yet. And it just feels like, oh, well.
Right. I have seen all of season 4, and I love it. It's one of my favorite seasons of the show.
Well, you mentioned, your character obviously is involved with the Anthony LaRusso storyline. And I have to say, I've said it on other interviews as well, because we're interviewing a lot of the cast. My favorite scene of all of season 4 is the library scene with Anthony and the police and Kenny. We turn the lights. I love that scene.
You're like holding your breath. You're like,
But it's like a bit scary, but it's funny because then you see like Griffin
Yeah.
does such a good job. Everyone's getting taken out by Kenny, and he's like, guys, what's happening?
it's great. It is. And that's what the show does so well is it combines that suspenseful drama with such great classic comedy. Like that's just one of the many things that the show does so well.
Talking to your dad and everything, did you know that when, and especially like on Netflix, it drops on Netflix, did you know that it was going to have this like nostalgia, bringing back old, amazing, original like cast members and did you know there was going to be a mix? Do you think your father knew, or did it kind of just happen a little bit? Because that's
Again,
what I
think
love
it
about
feel-
the show, right? Like it mixes
Yeah.
both, right?
Yeah, I think it's exceeded his expectations.
Yeah.
I think he had an idea, and it's been so great because that's one of the many things that I think fans love about the show is that you have these characters that they know and love coming back to this world. But I think it has even exceeded his expectations, which is awesome. It keeps it exciting.
What about you
for the
specifically? Did you know that they were going to do that thing? Like you're going to have new characters that we're going to kind of see their arc and see their discovery, but they're going to bring back old characters. Did you know that they were going to do that the way they did it?
To a point.
Yeah.
To a point, yes. But again, like I just have to commend like the creators of the show, the writers
The
of
big three,
show,
absolutely.
the big three, and the whole writing team, to be
Yeah.
honest. They're all just so brilliant and they know what they're doing. They know they're such super fans and they know what fans want to see. And that's one of the things I love about the show too, is it plays to what so many fans of the Karate Kid, the original films, love. But also you have this young cast that's so phenomenal. And so that brings in new generations. And that's why it's a show that, parents or grandparents are watching with their kids. And how many shows really do that? I mean, it's kind of
Exactly.
rare.
But I
Yeah.
remember I'm a 90s kid and everything, and I was very young when the first Karate Kid came out, but you know how it is, like reruns and everything and marathons on TV, right? I watched
Right.
them all. My favorite part of them was the music, like the soundtracks of the Karate Kid movies, and they do a really good job paying homage in Cobra Kai and everything. Growing up, were those like songs like around a lot in like your household or like brought up? Was the soundtrack brought up a lot growing up with Karate Kid?
Not too much. I
Okay.
mean, I watched the film as a kid, and as we were talking about before, I'm a huge music lover.
Yeah, exactly.
And a musical person. So I feel like I always notice good music when I hear music that resonates with me when I hear it. It wasn't something that was necessarily played a lot in my house, but it was always something that was inspiring to me. And we still talk about it. If we ever see the film on TV, we're like, oh, this music is just so great.
Yeah, and then they have
it-
like an original. Yeah, and they use some of the original songs from the Karate Kid movies in Cobra Kai, but also the original soundtrack for the Cobra Kai show is so good.
Yeah,
and
it's great. It's so brilliant. And actually, I think the album for season 4 just dropped today.
Exactly.
So get
That's
on
kind of why I
that.
brought. Well, I wanted to bring it up too because you mentioned singing and everything. You got to bring the music up because I feel like the music
Yeah.
just is such a big part of it.
Right.
I'm wondering. We talked about it a little bit. Like I said, it's like the show's so popular and I love it so much. And I have a lot of reasons why I love it, but I'm just curious from your perspective, what you see online with all the fan base and everything. Is there anything that stands out why you truly think it's the hit that it is, Julia? Like, I'm just curious.
I think a little bit of what I was speaking about earlier about it being, it brings multiple generations together.
Yep.
And that just adds to this fan base because you have fans of the Karate Kid films, but now you also have young fans of Cobra Kai that maybe haven't seen the Karate Kid films or hadn't seen them and are now watching them because of the show.
Yeah.
I think it's that. And I think, at the core of these films or the Cobra Kai show it's about people, it's about bullying. And that's something that unfortunately has been kind of timeless.
Yeah.
And a lot of those underlying themes are not something, they're not a fad. They're not going to kind of go out. And I think it resonates with a lot of people. And Cobra Kai specifically just delves into the gray area of like, who are you rooting for? Maybe you're rooting for one person starting at the beginning of the season. And then by episode 5 or 6, you're rooting for someone else. So that's another thing, again, a testament to the writers. Like they delve into those gray areas, which is, it keeps it human. And it's so relatable and exciting.
Oh, I find it so interesting you say that too, because I remember now it's a little different now. They're both kind of like the protagonists a little bit, like Johnny and Daniel LaRusso. But I remember when I saw season 1 of Cobra Kai,
Right.
Daniel LaRusso was like pretty much like the bad guy for
your
a little
allegiance can kind of change, and that's, I mean, if we're specifically talking about Daniel and Johnny, like I think they're more similar than they realize, and they both are so well intentioned. They just have slightly different ways of operating and very different backgrounds of how they were brought up, and that influences us as people. So it just does such a great job of all of that, and I think that's what people connect to it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and very quickly before we wrap up, going back to your scenes and everything, what was it like working with Brett and everyone? Like Brett's been on the show before too, right? So like, what was it like kind of working with everyone on that? Because that was such a great scene and so much going on in the LaRusso house, the family photo, so much was happening in that sequence if you think about it.
It's a lot happening. It was a blast. I mean, it was one of the best experiences I think I've ever had, because everyone is such a joy to work with and to be around. I had never met Brett before working with him, but he's such a delight. He's so hysterical. And another highlight, aside from obviously working with my dad, is working with Courtney Hengler, who plays Amanda. And she's a dear friend. I look up to her so much as a human, as a comedian, as an actor. She's just so great. To get to play off of her in the therapy session scene was just so much fun. And Randy Heller too, who plays my dad's mom. I had never met her before we had worked together for season 4. So that was just probably so full circle for my dad. It was just it was emotional in the
There's
best
so much
way.
going on, right? Probably when you showed up.
So much. There was so much going on, but it was such a blast. I couldn't have had a better experience.
I love the family photo, and like it's all over social media. Like that's the best. I'm telling you, people are gonna get that framed. Like
I know.
It's gonna be framed, and then like everyone's gonna go to the conventions and try to get everyone to sign it. It's gonna be like Pokemon, gotta catch them all.
Exactly. Got to catch them all. We'll start now.
It's going to be good. Julia, thank you so much for your time. It was so great chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
No, absolutely. So, if they haven't watched season 4 of Cobra Kai, it's streaming now worldwide on Netflix. And you know what? Yeah. But if they have watched it, they could watch it again.
True. As many times as you want.
Absolutely. Where can people follow you on social media to keep up to date with everything?
I am on Instagram and Twitter, at Julia Macchio. Mm-hmm. So that's where you can find me, follow me, keep up with my journey if you want to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been Pop Turnitive, youtube.com/Pop Turnitive for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Julia Macchio and PD Beats signing off.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Turnitive. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Pop Turnitive on YouTube. Be sure to like Pop Turnitive on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.